Welcome to Mystic John Paranormal, and today we're going to discuss a really important subject. It's spirit boxes. Can we use them? Can't we use them? Do they work sometimes? Because there's a lot of people who believe in them staunchly. There's a lot of people who don't believe in them. Absolute nonsense. And then there's a few people in the middle, quite a few actually, who don't believe them on the whole. But they've had some really, really odd outputs from the spirit boxes that make them think that surely wasn't random, was it? So let's discuss what they are, really basically. What do they do, and where do they get the information? How does it select the information, and what inputs are the most important with this app? And then we're going to go through a couple of the issues and try and work out if we can reduce the risks of some of these issues, and then we'll try and make a conclusion. So stay with me as we go through our journey of what is a spirit box and can we use them in investigations. So number one, I want to go through just the basics of how these work. So there's two ways of these work. They work through databases and they work through a radio. So I use an Afterlight box. Now, a very old program, so there's not an awful lot of AI in this. There's probably a couple of little bits in it. I believe there's a couple of little really simple bits of AI, but it's certainly not one of the more recent ones that have quite a bit of AI in them. So how do they work? Well, my spirit box, I can click a little button at the top and it will open up the internet and it will pull the radio, a set of radio stations. It'll just go through the frequencies, and then at a certain point it will say what's on that frequency, and that point is exactly the same point as when the program would go through the databases and pull off a word from that database. Now those databases can be several things. They can be words. I've had apps that have just words in. I've got there are apps that have phrases in. So the GhostTube app has 2 or 3 words, 2, 3, 4 word phrases in it, and you can also add into the basic free version single words. So it can come off with single words. It can come off with phrases that are in there. So basically single words, phrases, and my app also has syllables. So you can actually go through and if you look at my video now, and I'll show you a video of my investigation in Titchfield Abbey, you will see how the syllable thing works when I ask for. I say Beardo doesn't like these apps, and you'll hear the word Beardo come out. It's used. It's pulled off what I said into the microphone. It's gone Beardo, and it's found the syllables and linked them together and given me the phrase straight back. So. So, how does it work out when to pull the information from the database? Well, it's using usually the sensors on the equipment that you've got, whether it be a motion sensor, a magnetic sensor. It's using certain sensors, and it's trying to make that into a trigger to go and locate a word. Hopefully it's using the volume. So like if it's a magnetic sensor, perhaps it's a small change in the magnetic sensor, so it goes to a certain word, or bigger it goes something else. Because the problem is an app is logical. It's made out of logical programs. The only thing that can be illogical is if you go and throw in a random generator in there, which really does. I don't like ones that use that because they're totally random, and I can't see how a spirit can alter the random generator output for the right word. So hopefully you've got an app that doesn't use random generators. It does use the sensors to try and work out these words and try and push you to a certain output. So we've got sensors, we've got a program that uses a database or several databases, and we've also got the radio. So a sensor changes, it can go to a word in the database, or it can go to a word that's just been mentioned on the radio at that frequency at that point in time, and it blurts it out for you. Now, so that's how they work in general, very general. So don't start saying like, well, mine does different, mine does. They're all slightly different because they're all programmed by different people, and we can't tell how each single app pulls a certain sensor information and chooses a certain word, because they'll all do it slightly different. So how does this mean that it can work? Because obviously people immediately start jumping on the bandwagon and it doesn't work, because these are just random. It's going to a database. As soon as it's triggered, hopefully by sensors, it pulls the sensor information and it finds a word. And it's almost random based on either the power coming from the sensor or from a random generator. So it can't mean anything, surely. And then there are certain apps that don't use the sensors. Now these are really the ones I would say don't use. If we can't find out that it does use sensors, there's a likelihood that app doesn't use sensors. If it doesn't use sensors, then we're hoping that the spirit can change the program. Now the program is logical. It will always do a certain thing constantly. So it has to be using some form of random generator, because a program will always do the same thing. It will always do the logical sequence, bang, 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 if then do this, if not do that. So you can't make it go randomly through a database unless you have got a random generator. Now that I would say we try and steer clear of those, because we can't prove that they do work. We can't disprove that they don't. But they may work, but the likelihood is we are never going to be able to prove that they do. So please, I would always try and steer clear of the ones that don't mention that they use the sensors on board. So if we're using one that you have looked at and you know that it uses the sensors to work out the output, we can use those, but we've got to be trying to work out what are the risks in here. What are the risks that the outputs are actually outputs from a little bit of fakery? So we're going to just go through some of those risks. So number 2, let's go through the risks. So one of the main risks here is GPS. Now imagine your phone, for instance, has a location on. Always try and make sure that your location is not allowed to be accessed by the app. And the reason is, if I'm at 30 East Drive, they've got the Black Monk there, haven't they? It knows my location. It knows I'm at 30 East Drive. Bang! It's got the pin there, and it says, "Oh yeah, right. I'll mention all these. I'll mention this. I'll mention that. I'll mention the Black Monk because I know that that's where he is." So it's going to come up with lots of words randomly. Well, not quite random, is it? Because it's a little bit intelligent here. It can pull out the Black Monk. It can pull out the name of that nun that at the hotel I stayed at in South Cambridge, and it can just put it straight on the screen as it did, because it knows that that's where that spirit resides, where you are now. So the GPS is really important, and we do have to make sure that we're not allowing the app to find out where we are, so that it can just pull off random words that are not quite so random, are they? This is the big thing. This man here, the microphone. This is an input, and the input here can be used to work out what you're wanting. There are a couple of ways that programs can do this. One of the big ones that is out there that a lot of real paranormal experts know doesn't work, and it's been proven not to work, It says it uses the sensors. I know somebody who's actually been through the program. It does use the sensors, but the program itself doesn't. It collects the information from the microphone, from the sensor, and sends it to the manufacturer of the program. And what they do is they work out what it is from that first question. What is the sequence of responses that you're going to likely ask? So before you ask the next question, you ask one question, it knows what your next question is, and it can answer it straight away without you asking. Yeah, bang. Oh wow, or it waits for your second question, and it assumes that it's going to be this because it couldn't quite work out what you said. So it gives you what it thinks your second question would be. It gives you the answer. So you've got to be very careful, because some of these are very, very intelligent. They know where you're going. They can say the name because you've asked for the name. Then they'll say how they passed, and then they'll say what the year was it when they passed. And of course, the year can also be an age. So they don't say 1986. They'll say 86. So it could be how old were you, or it could be when what year do you think it is at the minute. So you've got to be very careful about what you say into this thing, because there are certain apps that especially ones that don't use the sensors, that will pick on what you've said, and they work out what you're going to say next. So be very careful with those. Also, if you say a name here and you heard it with the video, if you remember the video, it's one of these where I say Beardo doesn't like these apps, and it clearly heard the word Beardo and it took off 2 syllables. This particular app has syllables in it, so it's pulled off the syllable beer because that's what it heard, and then it's pulled off syllable do. So it says beer do because it's pulled off it didn't have the word Beardo in its data bank. It's pulled off the syllables that make it up. Very interesting. It also said Abbey, but we're in an Abbey, and I've said the word Abbey several times. This is the we're at Titchfield Abbey. Bang! That investigation obviously is clearly where we are. We're at an Abbey, and it says the word Abbey on the Sanctus talk at the bottom. So we've got to be very careful what we say into this thing, because it can just repeat. And when the wife was alive, she actually used the app a few times, and she knew full well never to say a name, and then if that name comes back, then that might be something that we can look into further. So we need to make sure what we're saying into here isn't making the app pull the same phrase back, or what is my name? What do you think could go wrong there, guys? Well, Google knows my name, so if I say what is my name, it could just go to Google, and if you're on the phone, if it's got access to Google, it can find your name, and it can say what your name is. Your name's John. How many people are in this room? That's different, so we'll come into that in a minute. So make sure you don't say into here too many times, or as few times as possible anyway, certain things that you're expecting to be repeated back or hoping to be repeated back, because as soon as you said it, whatever comes out afterwards can be totally negated. So the main risks are indeed this bad boy here. They're also the GPS and location devices, such as the Google Locate. So how do we reduce any risks here? Well, one of the things, like I say, if you're on the phone especially, a lot of these apps, you can go into your settings and you can remove the access right of that app to finding your location. Very important point. Always try and remove the location so that it cannot work out where you are, because that's absolutely critical. The next thing is the internet. Now, this is a little bit divisive, isn't it? Because I always, if I'm going to a hotel, I will have the internet off if I'm using this app. In fact, I won't connect the internet at all until I've used the app and gone away. Because as soon as I connect the app to the internet, it's going to know where I am. And it may even just look at the name of the server and see that it's XYZ hotel and just use the internet to find out if there's any spirits there. So you turning the internet on is really difficult, really awkward, because if you're wanting to use the radio frequency and let it scan the radios randomly, all the way through, forward or backward, and then when a spirit sort of triggers a sensor, it goes bang. Okay, we'll play that word at that particular point on the radio, or go to the database. Certainly, the radio side of it, you need the internet on. So, if you're wanting to use the radio part of it, you may have to put the radio on. Now, obviously, it's better that you don't have the internet on, so you can't play the radio. But if you're wanting to, you're going to have to make sure you word these things very, very carefully. And it's similar to the fact that if you don't want to get the location off, or you're thinking, I don't know how to do it, you're going to have to make sure that all those questions that you ask are not related to any response that you can get from the internet. So there's no use being at 30 East Drive and saying, are there any spirits here who, can you give me your name? Because you'll get the word Black Monk, because that's linked to that location, that GPS location that you're at. So make sure they're things that you can't get from the internet, because then it's not able to just look up GPS, boom, okay, there's 6 people in this room. It's going to have to know that from seeing the people there, or just randomly guess how many people there are in a standard paranormal team. You've got to be careful. There's AI in some of these bigger, more recent apps. My app, the Afterlight box, is a little bit older than that. Doesn't have an awful lot of AI in it. It can work things out by what's come through the speaker, as you saw in the clip. It came up with Abby because it had been said a couple of times, and it said the word beardo because it repeated it straight after I said it. So there are semi-intelligent things in some of them, and there are completely kosher AI bits in certain other apps. So try and word your questions so that it can't work out from the internet. Also, this thing about the app that sent the information to the creators, so it knew exactly what sequence investigators went through their questions in. 80% of them asked this question first. 60% asked that question second, and it literally just kept waiting for you to say something, gave you an answer, and most of the time it was right, because it knew the sequence that you guys went through your questions in. So try and move the questions. Don't always stick to the same rigorous standard questions. What's your name, and how did you pass over, and what year do you think it is? Those questions that you always ask in a certain sequence, change them around. And remember, if you've got AI in that app, it can work out your sequence just as easy as using the general. 80% of people ask their name first. It's so the more recent apps, make sure you change it, certainly, because it will be working out as you go through the different investigations which questions do you usually ask first, which question do you ask second, which question do you usually ask third, and it will be able to work out through voice recognition what it needs to respond to you with, and when and in what order. So always change around your questions. Always make sure the questions are vague enough not to be able to just grab the correct response, because it's like using the word name. As soon as you say the word name, it's narrowed down the number of words it's going to pick from the database. It's not going to pick the word house. It's not going to pick the word dog. It's going to pick a person's name, male or female. It's going to pick a name because you've said the word name. So You might use the word called. What am I called? Yeah, just try and make something that's not quite as specific, so that thing there doesn't give the program the ability to just randomize something, but narrow the response down to an awful lot less numbers. Now, he's asking for a name. How many has he said? Well, he said 3 so far, so I'm going to repeat one of those. Yeah, so you do be careful what you say into it and what order you say it into it. So we've got the location. Make sure that the location is set off. Internet, preferably, turn that off. Make sure you're putting the questions different, and make sure you're putting the questions in a way that's vague enough for it not to be able to do voice recognition and narrow down what the output's going to be to 2 or 3 words, so that it's going to have a 30%, 50% chance of getting this one right, just purely by what you said into the microphone. So the conclusion, well, you see, this is really interesting because hopefully you stayed on, because we've wiped the floor with it, haven't we? I mean, it's going to the internet, it's going to the GPS, it's going to this thing here is dangerous, isn't it? I've seen people not say a word into it and just let it say things, and that's a great idea, absolutely stunning idea. If you want to tell me something, tell me something now. And it's brilliant. It can't work anything out apart from the GPS or the internet. It's going to be flummoxed by what is it going to say to you back. So, is it possible that this works? Because we've already destroyed it, haven't we? Well, we have, but let me take you to one of the debunkers, and I can't remember which one it was. They went into a place and they said. There are loads of questions, probably in the same order as they always do. So I'm thinking this is just useless. We don't need to listen to this. And it said the word shot 5 times, and it wasn't until they actually edited this and they said the first time it said it was when Trump got shot at. I wasn't really allowed to say that. And then he got shot 5 times. So, and that's how many times it said the word during the investigation. And they kept saying, it said it again. Was that coincidence? Now, it's an extremely strange coincidence that it said that the first time it said that was when it happened over in America. And this is being filmed in England. So, it's unlikely to have got it off the radio, or and how would it get it off the radio? Is the most widely used word at this second in time is that word, because that's what's happened this very second over in the US. Well, we're in England, it wouldn't have come through quite so quickly, so it is very unlikely, but it could have got it from the internet, it could have got it from the radio, but there are things that people have picked up on from these programs, and they just seem to is it random? Could it have happened like that? I've had 1 or 2 where we nearly fell one where we nearly fell off the sofa. It's like, did it really say that? And it responded in such a way, it was an intelligent response. It couldn't have made it up. The internet I always have turned off. So it's not picking it up off the internet. We purposefully don't say names into this thing. And part of the response was a name. And you're thinking, now that is weird, because I've not said that person's name. And it's come out with it, and it is Frank or whatever. And we just fell off the floor, onto the floor, because there's no way the program could have picked it up. We didn't say the name on purpose, and it comes out with it. Now, there are times like that when things just happen, and like it or not, the debunkers really can't explain that one with the Trump incident. it can't be explained. Nobody who looks at that can explain how on earth that happened and why it matched the incident at that very second in time so well. He even pulled off the timestamp and showed you the timestamp being exactly the same. So yeah, weird or what is one of the things, isn't it? So yes, I think we can use them. In short, how do we use them? We have to use what we've said in the previous section, the risk section. Make sure we look at it, make sure we're not giving it the firepower to come up with answers that appear absolutely brilliant, but it's worked them out from the GPS, from the internet, from what you've just been saying for the last half hour. It's a little bit like tarot cards, I suppose. You give the person asks you an open-ended question. You go on for 7 minutes telling them what's wrong. You've now given them enough information to cold read you. That's what it's doing. It's cold reading you if you give it too much information. Exactly the same sequence of events. You give it too much information, it blurts it out in a way that makes sense, especially if it's got AI. So we try and make sure we don't give it enough information and it's vague enough not to be able to allow AI or the program to narrow down the field of responses. Only then can we start to realize and debunk things when they come out, and that's the final thing. We need to debunk these things. So a response comes out. Could it have got that response from anything that I've said? Could it have AI'd it from a sequence of words that I put into the microphone? Only when you start thinking the location doesn't give it, I can't get it from the internet, I didn't say anything in there that could even remotely lead a program or an AI program into that response, can you start saying, this is interesting, this could be paranormal, but we can't prove it because you can't prove something like that. It just isn't provable, is it? Unless you think you can, in which case please do put a comment down below. But yeah, I think we can use them, and I think we can use them if we're very, very careful and we reduce the risks of contamination, we reduce the risk of AI, we reduce the risk of just repeating it like we saw in the video, and using the GPS and the location and the internet. So please do give me your comments. I'd love to hear from you. In short, we can use it, but we have to be very careful, guys. Make sure that we are doing it properly, and that when we've got the answer and we think it is something that's just strange, do a debunk on it. Play it back and see whether you can. You actually gave the computer a way of working it out. Debunk it. Always try and debunk it. It's a great way of doing it. If only for your own sanity, and just tell people it is a little bit of fun. We can't prove that any of these come from spirits, but sometimes we can't disprove it either, can we? Or can we? Comment down below. Mr. John Paranormal, over and out for one more video. Like and subscribe.